You're listening to One Free Family, a new take on peaceful parenting, where you can hear ideas for helping to raise free, independent, and peaceful children. Visit onefreefamily.com to connect and listen. Here are your hosts, James and Taylor Davis.
We are back with another episode of One Free Family. This is James.
And Taylor.
And we are excited today to finally get to all those listener questions and kind of little topics that are tough to turn into a whole episode, but nonetheless important aspects of parenting, and we're pumped to talk about.
Although you never know, because last week we thought we were doing a mailbag, and then we turned question 1 into a full episode.
Or if we don't turn this into a mailbag, we have to go back and delete this first part because...
Okay, it's going to be a mailbag. Okay.
Because otherwise it'll be... We can't just say it's a mailbag every week.
We can't just keep promising.
Have it not
okay. So yeah, mailbag episode. Just first of all, a few things. We are still having a lot of fun in our Facebook group, and we would love for you to join us there. Lots of really great conversations, and that is just One Free Family, right? On Facebook.
I don't know what the URL is.
I think that's it. So you can search for our group there, and I think it's probably linked on the website, but we'll double check that. And the next thing is, if you would like to support us so that we can make this show as awesome as it can be, you can support us at, please say it because I forget.
onefreefamily.com/support.
onefreefamily.com/support. James is laughing at me because I wanted to do the housekeeping because I thought I would be better. But we would love to have your support, and we are so very grateful to the people who are already supporting us. And last but not least, it was really exciting that last week, James and I got to go downtown in the town we live in New Hampshire, and see Blake Bowles speak. And if you don't know Blake Bowles, he is an awesome guy, and he has written some books, and he has a podcast called Off Trail Learning, and he really focuses on teenagers and talks a lot about how teenagers can either get into colleges if they want to without doing traditional high school, and or how they can have exciting and successful and fulfilling and happy lives without traditional 4-year school as well. So he's just doing a lot of really great work in that space, and he also takes teenagers on really cool travel adventures for his work and helps them look at what a gap year could look like for them. So it was really fun to see him speak about how he came to this idea and to meet him in person. And yeah, so we just wanted to share that. Check out his podcast, Off Trail Learning, if you'd like.
Absolutely. Yeah, Blake is a really cool guy, similar worldview to us in terms of working with kids, and, you know, potentially someone, especially with all his experiences, bringing kids on trips and seeing teens through from early teenhood, teenagerdom to adulthood. Got a lot of really interesting stories there. So hopefully we'll be able to work with him a little bit in the future.
Yeah. And I think his stuff is really cool to connect with if you have kids who are teenagers or are coming into the teenage years, because that's where he has focused so much of his time and energy and passion. So he's a really good resource for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Check him out, and you'll be not even pleasantly surprised.
You'll just be very happy.
Right on. Okay. So let's get into the mailbag. So these questions have no unifying theme other than our listeners are thinking about them. Let's start with one that I think is probably the fastest one. And this is a question around basically, well, they talk about what they should do regarding Christmas and Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny and things like that. Don't think we need to get into their specific thoughts on it necessarily. Yeah. What do we do in terms of Santa, all those different things? So we do celebrate Christmas in our house. Yeah. What do we do and why, I guess?
Yeah. And the question I think was kind of centered around honesty and how we kind of perceive that with our kids.
Well, it was, but I think not everyone thinks of the Santa issue as an honesty issue.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, I guess the two opposing sides here are one side which says doing Santa and the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny or whoever else, what other fictitious characters you want to do with your kids, those are going to be fun, and why not just do it? And if the kids are going to have fun and have this great time about it, is it really...
What's the harm?
Do we need to really get all worked up about that one day when they're like a little bit older and they kind of realize that Santa is just a former guy who's definitely not going around climbing down everyone's chimneys every single Christmas, right? So what's your take on it? Yeah,
so our take and the approach that we've taken with our kids is to not do that, I suppose. They've known from the time that they were old enough that, for example, Santa, and lump everything else similar to that in there, is a story. and that he's not a real person. And so I think what you're saying, we've had people kind of question us on this and say, well, you're kind of ripping all the magic right out of Christmas and the Tooth Fairy and Easter and all of that stuff. And I know not everybody celebrates these things, but you can apply this to any kind of fictitious, imaginary thing that your culture has a tradition of kind of telling kids is true. And kind of my response to that and what we do is we still talk about kind of the idea and the story around Santa Claus, and we engage with that story in a really joyful and happy way. And at the same time, our kids know it's imaginary, but I think it still feels really magical to them. Sometimes hear the argument too, that the argument in favor of it because it's really good for kids' imaginations and it's so creative and imaginative. But for me, it's actually, my perspective is that it's more creative and imaginative to be able to play around this story and to imagine it for ourselves while we know it's really not true.
Yeah, understanding that imagination, it's only imagination if something actually isn't, if everyone knows it's not real, right? Because
exactly.
Otherwise, like if I come in and say, hey, there's robbers in the house, and we're like, ooh, let's play a game around robbers in the house, versus like, hey, there's robbers in the house, you know, like, and then now we're like running and we're like screaming hysterically, like we're not using our imagination there.
We just think it's true.
We're just pretending like there's robbers in the house, not knowing that there actually aren't. And my perspective is very similar, of course. I mean, we've talked about this at length, but basically, I think that real imaginative play comes when all parties are consenting to it, just like everything else.
That's a good way to put it.
When one side, especially if one really pushes the issue, then it's just not that. Now, you might still just want to do it, and there's momentum around it. There's, for whatever reason, like this tradition is really, really important to you.
Yeah.
And you just want to do it. But I don't think the argument that it spurs imagination is a very precise one.
Yeah, so. I agree. And the other piece of it for us, as we talked about this when our kids were younger, is for us and where we're coming from, it's really important to us that our kids can always know that when we tell them things, we're sharing the truth as we know it. And especially as they get older, I think it's going to be really important for them to trust me. And so I just wasn't ready to share this story with them in a way that was portraying it as true, and then someday basically have to tell them it wasn't true and have them potentially wonder, like, what else have they told me that's not true? Can I fully believe what they're telling me about all of these other things? And so that's another piece that's really important to me.
Yeah, and for me as well, like I have seen pretty painful conversations between kids. One specifically surrounding Santa, where two kids came up to me at camp and were like, one kid was like, Jason is saying that Santa is actually just my parents. And the other kid was saying, Santa is just your parents. You know, what do I do in that situation?
Well, like, that's a great question.
I'm put in a really, like, ultimately I just listened to them and said, it sounds like you guys are disagreeing and this isn't really about my opinion about things and so on and so forth. Because again, I assumed that if a family is doing the Santa Claus thing at home, they didn't want the director of their camp to be confirming this, that, or the other thing. And I felt like I was put in a pretty tricky situation, but I have seen really hard conversations, even not about specifically Santa, but just when one kid has a really, really, really strong belief in something that isn't true, but they believe that it's true because someone they trust told them it was. And then being put in the position where someone else will obstinately disagree, like really, really disagree. You know, now sometimes that can be around something like, did this guy set the record for most kills in a video game or whatever, and kids can kind of go back and forth. But with something like this that does have an objective truth surrounding it, just know that you're potentially setting your kid up for a really hard conversation where they're going to say, my mommy told me Santa was real, and some other kids probably saying, well, your mommy lied or whatever. And that I remember specifically still in first and second grade, it was a lump first and second grade class. I don't remember which grade it was, but being there, and I was like on the fence, I think at the time, but seeing two really smart, nice kids, one saying, you realize Santa can't go around like a billion chimneys every single it's Christmas. And the other kid saying, you just don't know how fast reindeer are, you know, and like, just like being in that conversation and like seeing how upset that kid was getting at this insinuation. And I don't know. So anyway, for me, it's just that the costs outweigh the benefits.
There we go, yeah.
And I have a general approach in my life to try to just say true things to my kids. And there are probably cases where omitting some truth is not the worst thing to do, but I'd rather save that for like in case of emergency, break glass sort of situations.
Right. What about, so this is one that we've had to kind of deal with, and I'm not sure we deal with it the best way because I'm not sure what the best way is, but what about if you aren't doing the Santa, etc. myth with your kids, and you know that they're going to be around other kids whose parents are doing it, especially right around those holidays? What do you do?
What do I do?
That's one that I'm always trying to figure out with our kids. And
well, what I tell our kids is that it's not your position to, like, if a certain family is making a decision about whatever, it's not really polite to rush in and just share everything that you believe is true. Like, I would equate it to religious beliefs, and that having open discussions about people and their religious beliefs, I think, is okay, even if it makes them uncomfortable. But it's not really very tactful or very polite to just walk into someone's home and be like, "You're a Buddhist, huh?"
Everything you believe, yeah.
Yeah, like, you don't want to be that guy, basically, is what I would say to our kids. And understanding that, like, you can hold a belief and you can believe that it's true. And if someone, like, very clearly believes something that you think is false, like doing a determination for yourself, is this belief going to hurt them? Are they, like, do they believe they can fly if they jump off a house? In
that's
that
a
case,
good point.
Let them know.
Yeah, that's a good way to kind of frame it with kids. And I think for me too, I've kind of accepted that there's some chance that my kids accidentally kind of share their idea that this is a myth with other kids, and we can have the conversation that you just said with them, James, and there's some chance that happens, and I can't fully control that, and I kind of have to just be okay with that too.
Well, yeah, and again, it's an opportunity, and this is actually a rather harmless opportunity to learn about when we say exactly what we're thinking and when we don't. I think there is such a thing as being so-called honest to a fault. Like, you wouldn't want to walk into a room and say, "Wow, you look too short to me," or you don't want to just walk in.
You look terrible. You look so tired.
Yeah. And just, like, say, well, your house is disgustingly messy. Like, these are just things people don't say. And as you grow up, like, you'll learn what's tactful and what isn't.
Yeah.
And you'll form relationships with people who appreciate your level of tact. But there's just some things, just why bother,
Cool.
So that's kind of my approach, and I feel good about it.
All right, let's
move on.
Let's go to number 2. We're going to do this.
Yeah,
it's a mailbag.
It's officially a mailbag. Okay. So this question basically comes down to, you're out with your kids, a stranger tries to interact with them, your kid isn't into it, and the other stranger is like, "Oh, your kid is so shy."
Yeah.
Super common, right? I think even parents of everyone except the most extroverted kids have experienced this.
And I've heard there are kids like that. We've never had one, but...
Oh, the really extroverted
Yeah,
ones.
I've actually met them. The kids who just go around and say hi to everybody and are super outgoing and bubbly.
I know, it's interesting because as a parent, like, before we even get into answering all this stuff, I think it's, like, really hard to avoid feeling like your kid is a reflection on you and, like, broadcasting to the whole world, like, am I a good parent or aren't I?
Totally.
And when your kid is really bubbly and engages a stranger, because this has happened to us.
Yeah.
Is all precocious with their little
I think I was actually like that as a kid, I hear.
You were probably amazing as a kid, I guess.
just saying, I just heard that I talked to everybody.
Yeah, I did not, for sure. A famous incident in my family was when I went back for my brother's, Chris's high school graduation party, my next door neighbor that my parents we wound up living next to these people for like 35 years. So at the time I had lived next to him for 20 years. I see him at this party and he introduces himself to me. And I said,
That's how.
"Hey, Ray, it's James, from next door." And he's like, "Oh, you were so shy as a kid that I didn't even recognize you when you said hello to me." I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, again, with all the shy talk. So anyway, I was not one of those kids either, but it does feel like this interaction is a pretty uncomfortable one for whatever reason.
When the child is more hesitant to engage with a new person, you mean?
Right, because you're put in this position where someone points out your kid is shy, and it's almost like pointing out that your fly is down, or like...
for some reason, right?
Yeah,
and there's almost like this... and it's almost like... I mean, I know people don't always come from this place, but I've come to the point where I'm like, man, my kid doesn't really owe you anything. Absolutely. Like, it almost feels like this person has this expectation that they deserve a bubbly and outgoing response from your child. So, let's talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, so, I mean, where do you think, you said you think they have that expectation that they deserve to interact with the kid. Where do you think that comes from?
Yeah, so I think I think our society has a general idea and places higher value on being extroverted than it does on being introverted. A few years ago when we were at an unschooling conference in Long Island, I actually went to a talk by Teresa Graham Brett, who I've talked about on this show before. She wrote a book called Parenting for Social Change. And the whole talk was about that. It was about introversion and extroversion and I think it was kind of about how do we support our kids who are more introverted when they live in a society that highly values being extroverted. And so if you just think about that for a minute, kind of take a beat, you'll probably think of a lot of situations in your lives where that's been apparent, that it is better to be an extrovert in our culture. So I think that's where that comes from, that kind of expectation of a response from a child. And I think it's also where that feeling of discomfort as the parent of a child who is more introverted, kind of that feeling of like, man, I wish my kid would just engage with this person. It would be so much less awkward. So can I talk a little bit about my own experience with this? Yeah. So our oldest, who's 8, was all of our kids are pretty introverted in a lot of ways. And as toddlers, they really did not feel excited about interacting with new people right away. So our oldest, so when he was my only one, when he was, 1.5 to 2.5, he was not into interacting with new people. And in fact, he even went through a little stage where he would growl at new people when they tried to talk to him, which, as you can imagine, was quite uncomfortable for me, especially him being my first kid and just this all being very new to me. And that was really hard. As time has gone on and as I've become more confident as a parent and I've learned to trust my kids, I've at least been able, what I've done is the work on thinking about that higher value that our culture places on being extroverted. And I've been able to get to a place where I've peeled back those layers for myself and I've realized, you know what, neither is better or worse. They're just different ways of being in the world and different ways of interacting with the world. So fast forward 8 years to me having, or 6 years or whatever, to me having a toddler right now who's 2.5, who also does not really like interacting with new people at first. I trust him and I'm able to feel more confident in kind of supporting the way he wants to interact with the world. So something I do when we meet new people and sometimes he'll kind of cover his face or he'll look away and he won't want to talk to them. I've chosen not to say he's shy. And I've also chosen, James, you brought this up, not to apologize for it. And sometimes I still have that gut reaction and I do it and then I want to take it back because there's nothing wrong with it. It's just his way of being. It's not rude. It's just the world is a new place to him, right?
And there's very good reasons for people to be, and I mean, animals of all kinds are very uneasy around new stimuli.
New beings.
Typically, when someone comes up, like if you were, it's funny, there's a lot of intentional coaching around to act around like strangers, let's say. But if you spend your child's whole toddlerhood and into young childhood basically forcing them to believe or helping them to believe that they should be pleasing these strangers as they come up. One. And then someone comes up that they're kind of like unsure about in a situation where you're not present or, wherever else. And in the back of their mind, like the old saying that your voice becomes their inner voice, in their inner voice might say like, I don't really feel comfortable on this person, but I probably should do something to please them.
I've been told I have to be polite and do the right thing.
I guess I should smile. I guess I should answer their questions. And this is I think we've talked about this in one of the consent episodes really early on, but that's also why if it's a family member and the kid is feeling uneasy, you definitely, I think, don't want to then be like, well, just give your auntie a kiss or anything like that.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I think what you're saying is important. Again, it's like leaning into the idea of trusting our kids to interact with the world on their own terms and letting them build their own kind of inner compass of what feels okay to them so that as they're growing and as they get older, they can continue to trust that inner voice instead of kind of overriding it because they've been taught that they need to please people or do the right thing. So I think that's really important. And I want to go back to when I said I try to stay away from saying they're shy. I will say that I didn't look it up in the dictionary. I don't think the word shy has to have a negative connotation, but I think, again, in our mainstream culture, it kind of does. It's like I'm sorry, he's just really shy.
Well, that's the way it's used. It's
not used that way.
Oh, have you met my friend Rob?
Yeah, he's super shy. You'll love him.
Yeah, he's shy.
It's not really used positively. No. Although I think in certain ways, parents can use it positively if they've kind of embraced the idea. But I think it's tricky. So James is disagreeing.
I don't think so. I just think it's a word in our culture. It means you're introverted in a bad way.
Right. And so I've tried to move away from that and find something else to say. And typically what I say currently with my 2.5-year-old is, it usually takes him a while to warm up to new people. And if the person continues to try to get them to engage with him, I just answer for him. Like if they're asking him questions or whatever, I just take care of it for him, basically. And I try to model for him that in general, because I do believe this to be true, like in general, most people are friendly and mean well, and I respond to them happily. But I also try to respond in a way that shows those people that, like, I'm not apologizing for him. I'm not embarrassed about him. I'm not trying to change his behavior. I'm just saying, like, it takes him a while, and I'm trying to show them that I'm okay with that. And I think it also shows my child that the way he is engaging with the world is perfectly fine, and he can trust that.
Yeah, and I think if you go back to the old lens of, like, imagine that this person was a grown-up and not a toddler, how the whole interaction would or should look. Like, so sometimes you and I will go to a social gathering, right? And let's say someone comes up to talk to us, and for whatever reason, one of us is more enthusiastic. Let's say, for example, in this hypothetical, that I'm more enthusiastic to talk to this person than you are.
Sure.
And they say something to you, and maybe you were like a little distracted, or maybe you're not, like, you just don't jump right in.
Yeah.
You're not totally on or whatever. Like, ooh, and she turns to me, oh, she's pretty shy.
Yeah, that would not happen.
We would be like absolutely aghast, obviously.
Yeah.
But no, we understand that as your life progresses, you're going to click with some people more than others.
Totally.
Sometimes it's based on some kind of like intangible sort of quality. You're not exactly
some gut
sure.
feeling.
And two other, I think, really important things. A lot of the whole conversation around shyness and introversion, I wind up coming uncomfortable with, because it's like, you have to either be one or the other.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Once you are, then that justifies all behavior that in the future, right? And so for me, I told a story about my neighbor Ray not even recognizing me, because his impression that I was so shy growing up. And as you can imagine, I got that all the time. Why is he so shy? He's so shy. At some point in my life, I realized, without any help from anyone else, that there were things I wanted from life that I couldn't get by behaving in an introverted way, right?
Right.
And so even though it was uncomfortable for me, very uncomfortable for me for most of my life, to go up and shake someone's hand and introduce myself, kind of the basics. I especially realized at the summer camp where we were, because when we were teenagers.
Yeah. When we were teenagers, when we were counselors and campers.
And so as I was growing up, I realized I would like to be a counselor at this camp. My whole thing of, like, basically making someone fall over themselves to want to be my friend before I finally engage back isn't going to work. Like, it's weird and uncomfortable to walk up to someone and say, hi, my name's James, or hey, what's your name? Or, just try to engage someone who didn't actively engage me.
Yeah.
I just want this for my life, and I want to be able to contribute to the world in this way, and I'm going to do it. And so I worked really hard, and it was still really challenging, and things like public speaking, which I think are more anxiety inducing for natural introverts, let's call them, were still impossible. And then eventually, as I gained a work position that required that, I fought through that too. So instead of, in the old fixed mindset category, instead of having this narrative around myself,
right,
like, well, I'm an introvert,
I just
so I can't
do that.
Yeah. It was, my natural inclination is towards introversion. So certain things are going to be more challenging for me. But just like, my body's natural inclination towards not being, like, super strong is going to create some challenges. I can lift weights. Now, maybe I won't turn into, I don't know, like our friend Shay, who's like really bubbly and really natural at meeting people for the first time. Maybe I'm never going to be that or something. But that doesn't have to be, I don't need to reach like chief extrovert status.
Of course not. You just need to be able to like kind of do the things you need to do to be happy in your own life.
When I discuss it, especially with our oldest son, who I think is somewhat similar to me in this way, like he gets filled up by relationships, but also like it can feel unsure for him at first. I just try to talk to him and acknowledge the challenges that exist and say, I know it sometimes feels hard for you,
Yeah.
And here are some strategies I've used to work through that discomfort.
Yeah.
Here's why I do, because I really enjoy meaningful relationships. And sometimes you just don't know who's going to become a good friend of yours at first,
right.
And so again, shifting that conversation around like, is my kid shy or isn't he? Do I need to apologize? Or no, it's just like, at this stage in my kid's life, this is how they are and how they're responding to certain stimuli. How can I help them process that as painlessly as possible and potentially earmark this for growth in the future if they demonstrate an interest, right?
Yeah. And I would say, you know, like our 8-year-old who really, really struggled with meeting new people when he was a little toddler. Now I think, I don't know, he gets gut feelings about people. Sometimes we'll be out and somebody we don't know at all will kind of be like at a table next to us, and something about them, he'll just start talking to them and just really enjoy having a conversation with them. And other times he's less interested, but he's 8 now. So I think he is starting to feel more comfortable with the way in which he engages the world. And I guess all of this is to say that him being unsure about new people as a 2-year-old, and us it was harder for me then, but trying to let him be that way, has not messed him up. He's really happy and has healthy relationships and is doing just fine as an 8-year-old.
Yeah. And I think another thing that really helps in that regard, like that's helped with that transition for him, is the fact that his consent was always considered, and his bodily autonomy especially was always respected.
Yeah.
Because you can imagine being a shy 3-year-old and you're not sure about someone in the first place, and then it goes one step further, and now that person is like touching your body, not even, you know, not in a bad way, but like hugging you.
Yeah, kind of insisting that you give them a hello hug or
just whatever. And you're like, you know, I'll shake his hand. When you meet someone, you shake their hand. Like, if you force the encounter to be even more awkward than it already is, that's not going to create a positive association. Get ready for your
kid to be even more unsure about new people.
And likewise, if your kid, on the flip side, has a lot of really positive experiences with grown-ups who do respect him and do give him space when he needs it, then I think that warming up process can happen a lot faster. It's funny, in my work with teens in particular, one of the things I started saying to teens, because a lot of teens, by the way, will act the same way when they meet a new grown-up.
Totally.
Especially if that person is in a perceived position of authority. So like I was the director of the camp.
Yeah.
And some kids are like, oh, it's like the principal of the camp.
Yeah, like we better just steer clear of this guy.
Yeah. And I'll meet someone and start talking to them and say like, so like, what are you into? And they'll say like nothing.
Yeah.
And I'll say, oh, okay. I understand if you don't want to talk about this now. I know a lot of times like adults will just want to grill you with a bunch of boring questions. Yeah. Just know that like I am really interested in getting to know you and your hobbies and whatever else, if you're interested in talking about it. And if not, no big deal. But in the meantime, like,
do your
nice
thing.
To meet you. Yeah. Come say hi anytime. And then I won't press the issue ever again. But if I see that they're like kind of feeling comfortable around me, then, you know, I'll start the conversation back up. Because so many of those teenagers, probably at some point when they were much, much younger, someone said, oh, what are you into? And they were like, oh, I don't know, watching YouTube. And the adult was like, watching YouTube.
Right.
Oh, rotting your brain on that YouTube garbage.
Like, cool, I'm glad I talked to you.
And you only need to do that so many times before you're like, oh, here comes a grown-up. They're
gonna for sure.
know it all and tell me my business and judge me for my hobbies. And if I say I just like to sit around and hang out with my friends, that's not going to be good enough. And like, it'll be a whole thing. So why don't I just act as shut down and tired as possible? And kind of like Gus does, he like just pretends.
Yeah, like sometimes our toddler pretends he's asleep when new people try to talk to him.
Funny. So anyway, I think the longest story short is stay strong. Understand that your kid is who they are. You don't ever have to be self-conscious for your kid not being interested in talking to someone else.
I think one of the greatest gifts we can actually give our kids is to model for them with our behavior and our what we say that we trust them to be who they are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Final question for today, I believe. And this comes from the One Free Family group as well. And I think this is a nuanced one. This is one we potentially could have gone into a whole episode on. So we'll try to keep it somewhat reasonable. But essentially, the dad in question here has had a hard time with his son interacting with what he believes to be bad influences, and specifically online.
Yeah.
So this can look like acquaintances that the kid has met online that he's now engaging in questionable behavior with, or playing a video game that has some questionable content from the dad's perspective, or watching a YouTube video that makes him feel uneasy. Basically, the idea is he's trying to do less restrictive approach around screen time in particular, and he's feeling like it's not actually creating a better situation in his home.
And kind of wondering,
rethinking it.
Right, and having some concerns that that he's seeing some negative behavior as a result of this online interaction. And so I think the person is asking like how to find the line between giving space and freedom and trust and also guidance.
And that's, like you said, literally says, where's the line between being guiding and overly authoritative?
Yeah.
So yeah, let's jump right in.
Let's do it. You start.
Great.
Because you had some good responses in the group to this. So.
Yeah, I would up getting involved in the discussion. I think I wind up being the champion of screen time sometimes because I feel like that voice needs to be shared because it's just such a, I don't know, I feel like societally, screens are shooting fish in a barrel. It's like one of the safest things you can say in a group of parents is how bad screens are.
To get a bunch of heads nodding and
yeah, exactly. Even though, and this is weird as I've gotten to know more and more people around it, a lot of the people that are the most vigorous in their concerns about screens and so forth still let their kids do it anyway. And I feel like that must be a really weird headspace to inhabit, I guess. Like if you feel that badly about it, but you're letting your kids do it anyway.
Yeah.
It's got to feel hard. So I think the first thing to just understand is to take yourself back on a little journey back to being 9 or 10 years old, right? And I'm going to do this for myself. So now I'm back and I'm in 4th grade and at the lunch table, and all I want to try to do is call up a time where someone has said something that would be considered inappropriate. I can't call up any single instance because it happened all the time. Like from the time I was in kindergarten, I have an explicit memory of being in kindergarten. So however old you are, 5 or 6 or something, and having someone talk about over-sexualized content that I would be uncomfortable hearing about now as a 36-year-old.
Yeah.
Right?
So this was like another kid at school talking about it.
100%. Yeah. And so actually in preschool, I can remember hearing terms that made me feel very uncomfortable as well. And so the big question is, the thing to acknowledge is bad influences are everywhere. They're in school. They're on the playground.
Right. They're not only coming through your kid's screen.
They're coming through your kid's screen. They are coming through your kid's screen.
I said they're not only coming through your kid's screen.
But they're coming through there. They are, potentially your kid's cousins, potentially just neighbors. Like these potential bad influences, back in the old days, it was like dirty magazines that your friend's dad had stashed wherever. These things are just all over the place. And the question is not, can we shelter our kid from bad influences?
Yeah, for sure.
At least in the United States in the year 2018, you cannot.
Right.
But how can we help our family move through these bad influences or to kind of sturdy themselves?
Exactly. How can we build a culture where we can kind of be faced with some of this and know where to go and know how to handle it?
Yeah, exactly. So I guess we can start in our own family because this has been a source of discomfort, I think, for some other people as they've engaged in our house and our kids, but like we don't have any real restrictions. Well, we do have some restrictions. We let our kids listen to videos where people curse. That's one thing I'll say. Okay?
Yeah.
And, we have an 8 and a 6-year-old, and that is in...
And a 2-year-old.
And a 2-year-old.
Who he doesn't really watch them, but he's around it sometimes.
And this makes people uncomfortable sometimes, right?
Yeah.
They will hear our kid listening to a video and assume that we just didn't know, right? Like we've had people approach us and be like, did you know that Ollie is watching a video?
Or somebody's saying the F word or,
And we're like, yes. Yeah. We did, actually. And it's funny, like at first, when our kids have heard these words and understand that there's more weight behind them and that they're naughty words, the 2 older kids have experimented with using those words more often around the house. And it's been an ongoing discussion around trying to discuss the nuances of that sort of language.
Totally.
And I don't know if the guy in the Facebook group who brought this question up, I just don't want to say his name in case he doesn't want me to.
Yeah.
If we'll call him Ron, if Ron is like concerned about his kids hearing dirty words or what exactly the level of bad influence is, but do you want to talk about just how we've approached that with our kids?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of language, I think we've just talked about, and again, the internet is not going to be the only place that our kids are going to hear these words, right? I mean, James and I don't like, neither of us just naturally curses a ton, but they're going to...
No, we don't curse in front of our kids for whatever
But they're going to
reason,
come across other people who do in their lives, and they already have. But so we just have conversations around the words themselves and kind of talk about how in our culture, these words do carry a lot of weight for whatever reason. And we talk about ways that they can be used. Like words like that can be used to be really hurtful. Just the same way a word that's not actually a curse, but a word like stupid can be used to be really hurtful. Or they can be used as, some people just use them conversationally as kind of like exclamations, and how there's different ways to use them. And so like, if our kid is watching a video where somebody is using that word, they're not watching a video where somebody is they're typically not watching videos where people are like using those words to hurt other people.
Yeah, can I jump in on that part? Because that's been a really key thing for me, is understanding that adults wind up gaining a very nuanced understanding of cursing, right? So like, it's pretty rare that you have an adult, a well-grounded adult, who just simply hears the F word, like say in a movie, and they just become so upset and they shut down, right? Like that's not typically the way adults respond, but they do respond that way if they hear their own child using that word. Yeah. And it doesn't really matter what the context is in that case. I think that actually sets our kids up for a non-nuanced understanding of these words and puts them in a position where they will have a lot of uneasy and confused feelings, where they'll see like, oh, well, I like this person, but then now they're cursing. Like, or does that mean they're a bad person because they're using this so-called bad language or naughty language? And so the discussion we've had with our kids, like it really had to happen for us around like these certain people that were streaming video games. Because if you want to learn how to play video games better, the best place to do that is online.
It's kind of like how you do your research.
And the people that are the best at it typically are like kids from the age of 17 to 25, right? Or young adults. Or whatever. And many of these people curse. And you can tear your hair out trying to find supposed family-friendly YouTubers and streamers. And it's very hard to monitor the whole time. And it's very hard to get a sense for if they're going to, like, I don't know, have someone on their team who's going to curse or whatever. And so early on, I was like so concerned about making sure that we find family-friendly videos. And like, I was like vetting the channels and watching hours of videos or listening to them while I worked, just to hear out for like the 7 dirty words. And then I realized there was one streamer in particular who was, I believe, to be a really, really, really nice guy. Like he would, you know, like I observed him stand up for a woman who was being bullied in a game for being a woman. I observed him be very diplomatic and generous with people when they defeated him. He was always really kind to the people who interacted with his channel, and he cursed a lot. And I was like, I think I would be okay with this kid being an influence on my kids. Put on your
critical thinking cap for a minute. Yeah.
I was like, with all of the virtuous qualities that this guy has, I could be friends with someone like this. He's a voice in this space that is bringing positive things to the table overall in terms of attitude.
He just happens to have a habit of...
Yeah, and he curses too. But it was like this side note. And I was like, oh, and also, this could teach my kid about how you can use curses to say like, F you, idiot, you know, in a game, which I really don't want my kids doing or hearing. But you also can get a sense for that really quickly too. Like if you remove the restriction of like, if I ever hear a swear, this channel is deleted.
Right.
Versus like, you can find out.
Versus like, let me sit down and engage with it myself and see what's going on here.
Yeah. And the person's like, oh, I'm going to steal my dad's credit card to buy V-Bucks in Fortnite. Like those stupid rash of videos that went around the internet. Me using stupid, by the way, in a not so nice way.
Yeah, not very nice.
But anyway, so like, yeah, just trying to help kids gain a more nuanced understanding of dirty words and
so I think language. All of that to say that I think we have this image of kids using the internet privately, alone in a room where their parents have no clue what's going on, getting up to all this stuff. I think that if we stay engaged with our kids and engage with the material that they're engaging with, I think sometimes we'll see that it's less harmful than we thought, and other times it might actually be really concerning. But if we've stayed open with them, then we have an opportunity to have a conversation with them about it and talk about what's making us uncomfortable about it, and kind of checking in with them about how they feel and kind of moving forward from there.
Right. And if we're thinking about trying to check in with them and move forward, one of the steps, I think you brought this up originally in our house, but that is to actually try to engage with the media and learn about it so that you can gain credibility when you actually have a conversation.
Right.
Because if I think back to, this guy's name was Siegel, he's an Overwatch streamer. If I would have gone and told our kids, oh no, you can't listen to him, this isn't kid friendly.
Just from hearing like a curse or something.
Yeah, just hearing one from the other room. That would put my kids in a position where they'd be like, well, Dad just sort of just doesn't understand. Like, there are some mean YouTubers out there, and Siegel isn't one of them. And he's
not one of them. And I think also, especially with certain types of kids, you then run the risk of them doing it, trying to hide and doing it, right, without your knowledge.
If you've lost credibility.
If you've lost credibility, and then you kind of run the risk of them actually maybe stumbling upon something a lot worse and not having any guidance or support around it, because now they're kind of doing it in secret.
Right. And on the flip side, if you sit... And even if it is one of the channels that you don't really like, and you say like, do you hear how she's talking about those other people that she's playing with? Like, hear the kinds of language she's using, her tone of voice. Like, can you imagine being the people that she's talking about
totally.
right now? And you can kind of create this empathetic discussion. And it's like, for me, I know it's really tricky when I engage with a lot of information to not have that creep into who I become as a person. And like in our house, like I just have a lot of concerns. Now, if you can engage with this kind of stuff and it doesn't creep into your behavior, then like, let's have a discussion about that. But it can be really hard when you hear people being negative and nasty all day long to not occasionally do that yourself.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about that, because one of the concerns that was raised in this question was this parent had a concern that he was seeing behavior from his child that was less than favorable. And he was wondering if it was, or thinking that it was being somewhat caused by, I think, an acquaintance he made online.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about interacting with other people that we don't know online, and also about the idea of like, am I noticing that this is affecting my kid's behavior?
Well, right.
Those are kind of two pieces.
For sure. And I think, again, some of this is hard to redo after the fact, but if you can go in with a kid and talk to them about how this relationship is feeling too. Because a lot of times when a kid is acting in a way that you really wouldn't like, it's a manifestation of some other discomfort in their life. So like, let's say you hear a kid being really nasty and jumping in, and I don't know, it sounds like maybe they're joining in and like bullying some other person online, right? Some kind of behavior that really makes your stomach turn. Coming in and chatting and saying, hey, let's catch up, like when you're off the computer, like letting them know that you're hearing and that you're present and that you're a party to what's going on. And then saying, hey, I know you've been playing a lot with Tented Bobcat. That was just a random name of gamer tag on Xbox. I know you're playing a lot with that guy. How's that feeling?
Yeah.
What was going on today? Like I heard that you guys were having some kind of conflict with one of the other players in the game. And they might say, oh yeah, Bobcat always gets really toxic to the people if they're not playing well on our team. How do you feel when he does that?
Right.
I noticed you jumping in. I don't normally notice you treating other people like that. Like when our friends come over or when we're at the playground, what's going on?
Yeah.
But just like turning the lens back instead of just coming in and making a value judgment, pointing out that you notice that you're observing the behavior, asking them how they feel, because many people are naturally good people and they have to develop habits around treating people poorly in order to do it.
Right. So it kind of holds a lens up for them to say like, oh, wait a minute, you're right. And not that will always happen, but it gives them the opportunity to come to their own realization of like, yeah, this isn't feeling awesome.
Yeah. Because chances are good they'll say like, I don't want to hurt people's feelings, or they might try to justify it, or they might say like, oh, well, I was saying that because this person called my friend a name, or maybe
that's another opportunity for conversation, right? And I think it's also okay to point out, if you know that your kid is having some sort of less than ideal relationship with somebody and you think you're seeing it affect their behavior, I think it's okay to just lovingly point that out to them. Like, hey, lately I've noticed that you've been kind of getting more frustrated more quickly, or whatever it is, and kind of like, have you noticed that? What do you think about that? And having a conversation about that too. Yeah,
right on. And I think the way, like, we can diffuse a lot of potential big time arguments in the future if we start slower with earnest conversations up front. So like the first time we hear our kid talking about something that we don't feel comfortable about, say through the voice chat, following up with a conversation right after and saying, hey, I heard you talking about whatever topic, talking about sex with your friend on voice chat. How did you feel about that conversation? Like, can we talk about it? Or is that something you're feeling interested in right now? And likewise with whatever level of inappropriate thing can come up. Like it can be a window into discussion if handled gently early on. Yeah. But if we come in guns blazing. And let's be clear, like that takes a lot of work, right? To check our own gut reaction and to respond calmly the first time. Yeah, 100%. And then from there, like especially surrounding, again, and I can only talk to my own values, but like if I heard my kid being nasty to someone through a voice chat online, when we check in the first time and help the kid process the experience, that opens the door for the next conversation where we can come and say, hey, last time we talked about this, you reflected that you didn't feel good about treating people that way online. And I heard you doing it again. Yeah. Like, is there something that feels like difficult for you about behaving in the way that you hope to.
Right.
You told me that you hope to not do that, and you still are. Is there something that's feeling challenging about that? And they may say, oh, well, like this group of guys, like they always do it and it's so hard not to.
Yeah.
And then you can open up that discussion around
like, well, is this the group we want to be playing with?
Exactly.
And could we help you find a different group of people to play with?
Or could we help you with some language around letting them know that you don't like that?
Totally.
anymore?
Letting them kind of, you have the opportunity to be the person to at least try to maybe change the culture here and have a good influence on people.
And that might feel really hard. And so then that conversation stops, and then, you hear it happening again, or maybe like you hear him saying the same thing to his little brother or something. And now we can move into, hey, well, you've said that you didn't want to act this way. We certainly aren't liking this very much. Now it's coming into our own house. Like, we might have to soon really talk about if this is something we can handle right now, because it can be really difficult when we're surrounded by people that are acting in negative ways to not have that creep in. And, in our house, we're happy to support you doing the things that you want. But if it's going to become really hard on the whole family, like we might need to re-explore how we're using voice chat online. And
I think everything that you just said hopefully illustrates, kind of gives a really good picture of what it looks like to stay involved and engaged with your kids when they're engaging, like with the internet and doing things like that. And again, like, let's dial it back to helping our kids navigate tricky relationships without the internet, right? Like, I remember being a kid in middle school and going to my mom for support because I was having trouble with my friends, and I was experiencing like being treated by some people in a way that really felt bad. And so this isn't like a new problem. It's just, there's more ways now for it to come up. And it's an age-old problem. And actually the cool thing about, obviously we can't be at our kids' side every second they're on the internet, but if we're present in their lives enough, we can help them develop the skills to continue to hopefully handle it better and better as they grow. Because most of the time, especially if our kids are home with us, or when they're on screens, they're home a lot of the time, like, we can be present. And we actually might have less of a window into what's happening with their in-person relationships. If they're at school during the day, they may not even tell us, and we might not be privy to it. So it's just another way that these challenges manifest.
Yeah. And I think it's neat to look at it as an opportunity that if it is happening in your own house, because like, I think we've talked about this on the sex episode and other ones as well. Just because you're not seeing it doesn't mean it's not happening. Yeah. And just because you're not seeing it doesn't mean it's not something that your kid is struggling with. So by nurturing those conversations as early as possible, we give ourselves the opportunity to have the bigger and more important conversations later on. And we give both sides, both us and our kids, a trial run. Like, if it starts with hearing potty language when they're playing Minecraft with their friends on Skype, that opens up the door for, the more serious stuff potentially.
And if we can keep doing the work on checking our own reactions, and all is not lost if you've kind of reacted really strongly once, but if we can keep doing that work, then I think we really leave the door open for our kids to feel safe coming to us if they do experience something uncomfortable that we're not around for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which feels to me like it's going to be more and more important the older they get.
I think you're right. And I think
we've done it.
We got to wrap a mailbag here.
Wrap it up. We did it. Mailbag. We answered 3 questions.
3 full questions.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us and continuing on our journey. And remember that every moment is a new chance to be the parent that you hope to be.
Love you guys. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to One Free Family. If you enjoy the podcast, please show your support by becoming a patron at onefreefamily.com/support. Your support will help make this show better. Plus, you can get access to rewards and additional episodes by joining. Again, that's onefreefamily.com/support. This has been a Pax Libertas Productions podcast.